Mick Foley has a message for the United States President Donald Trump, and apparently nobody liked that Dustin Rhodes decided to reply on a Threads post over at Instagram and Threads. So we're going to get into everything about this. And yes, this will be on the Squared Cirlce Podcast in adjacent to Discord notes, but because this falls under wrestling, it needs to be talked about. And again, if this makes you feel uncomfortable, it is okay. You can come back and listen to the podcast whenever you want to. The door is not going to be closed. But I will say that if you are going to be super emotional, and if all you can say is Orange Man bad, please do not comment on the video and or the audio podcast. And I really don't like saying that because I do encourage and welcome conversation. But if it's just emotional, if it's just Orange Man bad and you believe everything that the media tells you rather than doing your own research, then there's no way for me to at least try to change your perspective. You don't have to agree with me. There's a difference. I'm not telling you to agree with my take and responses to both of these different things. But I will say that the nuances that I will be presenting with this is to at least probably change your mind on how you think about Trump, how you think about MAGA, because for some reason people want to throw that around and people want to continue to have blame and divisiveness and violence and kill people and manipulate people and all of that. So I am really hoping that people would have an open mind when I give my takes. And if you do not have an open mind, please either think twice about what you want to say or don't say anything at all. Again, I'm trying not to dictate what happens, but whenever you mention Donald Trump, it just triggers people and we can't have normal human being conversations. Let's start with Dustin Rhodes first, only because that's very small and I don't have that much to say on the matter. So Dustin Rhodes is also on Threads. So in one of the replies, because somebody, had to screenshot it, there's a chick that goes by Angelic Art Ang, and she posted, "It's time for MAGA to own this. No more blaming Biden, no more blaming Obama, no more blaming Kamala or Clinton. You did this, you voted for this, own it." And here comes Dustin with, "Yep, we did, and it's great." Now, that really doesn't tell you anything because Dustin could have voted however the hell he wanted to vote. And I'm not here to judge him on who he voted for. But, he could not have maybe voted for Trump and he could still say, yeah, as a collective, because we're finally cleaning up America. We're finally sending back illegals. See, this is my problem. It's my problem with the wrestling community is that the fans, the so-called fans who get online and talk a lot of shit, they are selfish. They don't understand what's really, really going on. They really live in fear and they live like they are really experiencing something bad and it's like half of it is made up. Like you could still go outside and you can definitely walk, you could go buy food, you could go to the park, you could still see the same crackheads on the streets. Like nothing has changed. Nobody is following anybody who wants to be a perpetual victim out there. No one is following them to be like, oh, you can't do this, you can't do that. Oh, you can't go to the doctor for this or that. Sometimes it's okay to tell somebody no if it's for the greater good of their health and their life. I really thought that people were more inclined to be like, hey, we want you to live rather than we want you to be a science experiment. And I say this because, again, we are owning all the things that we are seen. We're like, yeah, we wanted this. We wanted security. We wanted people to get out of the country that came here illegally. Those illegals killed lots and lots of Americans, aka Lake and Riley. And I'm probably going to mention her name throughout this whole entire podcast. But like for people to get really upset over this and start to virtue single and be like, Dustin, you lost a fan. I remember reading one person who happens to have all the buzzwords, and she's like, you know, one of those that are disabled and all this kind of stuff. And she was like, I thought you were safe, Dustin. I thought you were a safe space, and I can't even trust that. Girl, he doesn't even know you like that. Why are people having such parasocial relationships with these wrestlers that don't even know them? Okay, if you like do a meet and greet and you meet them, they see your face, they interact with you, but they don't know you. So why is that person trying to put Dustin on a pedestal to be like, I thought you were safe, but because you wrote that, that means that you're not safe for me. And it's always about me, 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 me. No, it's not about you. And this is why I say every single chance that I get that these wrestling fans look for wrestlers and companies to be their activist voice because they are too scared to do the activism themselves. So they want people to speak on behalf of them. And even if you try to get an audience that is like, hey, I'm a safe space, you guys could come here, it's for everybody. And that doesn't work. It really doesn't work, because then they will dictate how you act, how you speak, how you do whatever it is that you want to do. They will totally control you. And then when you try to break out, they will ruin you. Even though I believe that you are the only person that could cancel yourself. Nobody on the internet could cancel you. It's just that a loud majority will just bark like chihuahuas. And, you know, that's it. But it's like, relax. So I basically said on Threads, wrestling fans having a Fox outrage, aka a fake outrage, over Dustin replying to whatever he wishes. These wrestling fans hold people they don't know personally as safe spaces. I said it before, companies shouldn't be your activism. People shouldn't be your activism just because in 2020, he supported all the trans stuff. I believe Dustin's trans kid is a step kid. Dustin is allowed to change his mind and be who he is, even if I believe he's stubborn. I really do believe he's stubborn. So what's the problem? America is winning right now. Go live. And if you want the extra context, back in 2020 of February 14th, Dustin tweeted out on Twitter, sick of this transphobia crap. My son is trans and it saddens me to see so many hateful people on the attack. Get over yourself and shut the fuck up. Hashtag keep stepping. This is why sometimes I have this like hate-love relationship about looking at Dustin Rhodes' tweets and stuff like that, and just looking at it because one minute he'll be for something because, you know, it relates to him and his family and his life. And then the next minute it'll just be like he could post whatever and he could post whatever. But it's like, can you just be consistent? So people started to call him out, obviously. And basically he had put a Twitter tweet that said, a lot of people coming at me saying I am MAGA. I am not. I am a libertarian. So a libertarian is someone that does not have a concrete conviction on whatever political aisle party that they stand on. They basically can float between the left, the right, Democrat, Republican, independent, centrist. Basically, if you are bringing issues up to Dustin Rhodes about something in particular, he may agree with you 100%, or if that's not what he believes in, and then he can, you know, disagree with you 100%, and he can have a different outlook on it. He does not have to choose one or the other. That's what libertarians are. That's what they think. That's their philosophy. So, for example, he can support the trans stuff because his kid is trans, even though I just think his kid is confused. But he can support the trans stuff while also saying that yeah, we voted for all of this and this is what we got, and agreeing with that kind of stuff. So he can do that. That's what a libertarian can do. I saw on Reddit just people being assholes and trying to twist his words around just because he's using the word libertarian, that, it's an easy way for him to get out of this stuff. But, sometimes people don't need to tell you their political affiliation, and sometimes people don't need to tell you their convictions or where they stand. If they have very good fundamentals and very good values, and they understand right from wrong, and, they are able to articulate why this works for them versus like something that doesn't work for them, like really well, you don't really need to push like, oh my God, you have to be either or. This is what is dividing our nation and our people further and further. When I say our people, I mean across the United States. It should always be America first, only because you are American. You are born into America, into the States. You are given necessities, even though the necessities cost like an arm and a leg, and you have to overwork and you have to do all this kind of stuff. But in the end, there is a reward and it is worth it. And we try our best to basically be good to each other. We really, really do try our best to be good to each other. But to constantly want to know where you stand on either side, and like you have to pick one, and if you don't pick the correct one, these people turn against you. So all of these supposed AEW fans turned against Dustin and other people just speaking out. And the only reason why I'm bringing it up is because for some reason, people do not understand that they should not have a parasocial relationship with these wrestlers, these human beings. And they have no obligation to believe what you believe. The same way that whoever's listening to this podcast episode, you don't have to believe what I believe. And I'm not going to basically hold you to like, oh my God, you better believe what I believe. If not, that's it. I can't believe it. You lost a fan. That's stupid to do. That is very stupid to be like, Dustin, you lost a fan because I can't believe that you sided with this person and this post on Threads. Like, how dare you? You're not their mother. You're not their father. You're not their authority figure. If you are getting fake outrage over the Dustin Rhodes posting and tweets and stuff like that, if you're able to comment on whatever the hell you want to comment on, then Dustin Rhodes can comment on whatever the hell he wants. That's all I have to say about that part. Now we get into Mick Foley's message. Man. So this is what's going to be happening. I am going to be reading, I'm going to be stopping, and I'm going to be giving you my initial thoughts on what I just read. That is how we're going to do this, because this is not live where I'm live reacting and I'm pausing, I'm doing all this kind of stuff. Because this is audio, it will be, I'm reading something and I will give nuance and perspective to this. Because when you are a millionaire or even like living comfortably, you don't have to be like a millionaire. If you're living comfortably in Long Island, in a mansion, you're not going to understand why people are cheering for what's happening. You're not going to understand why America is winning. And if all you do is watch CNN, MSNBC, all of the bad networks that had a really tight hold on the American people for years, if that's all you're watching, then you're getting brainwashed because they chop up everything. They give you very surface level stuff. Donald Trump can save a whole box of puppies, and, they could turn that around into something hateful and something stupid to make you hate Donald Trump. When in reality, the full clip and the full segment will be Donald Trump saves a box of puppies. The fact that wrestling fans and very manipulative sheep have been trained to hate a man just for hating him without anything substantial to back it up, like true substantial stuff to back it up, is really, really sad. That is conditioning amongst the American people, and that's not cool. Okay, let's start. In Mick Foley's video, he starts off by saying, "Hello, Mr. President. My name is Mick Foley. We've only met once. We are both members of the WWE Hall of Fame class of 2013. We had a very short conversation where you told me it was an excellent speech. Your two sons were next to you. 2 or 3, and I said, thank you, Mr. Trump. But since then, I've become a fairly constant critic because you watch CNN. That's why. And all the rest of the channels. That's why you become a critic. And then whoever gets into your ear by telling you what Trump did without the context, that's why you become a constant critic rather than watching people who are breaking down what's happening with Donald Trump in the right way. And then we also have our YouTube journalists on the ground to let you know what's happening on the front lines that the media won't cover because it doesn't boost their ratings for Donald Trump bad, anything else bad. You know what I mean? So he continues to say, and I think I've got a good reason to do that. However, I believe that if I'm going to have any credibility as a critic, I have to be willing to give credit where it's due. And you are due a lot of credit. Yes, he is. Please make sure to say thank you, Donald Trump, and thank you to the Trump administration, and JD Vance needs a thank you, and everyone else needs a thank you. Everything that he has promised, meaning whatever Trump has promised during the campaign stuff, he basically delivered, whether you like it or not. The tactic is not so classy. The tactic is not theater. The tactic is, we got to get this done. I don't care if it hurts your feelings. We got to get this done. And that is a strong leader. That is a strong father figure, because sometimes, we all have that one mother, that one father, or that one auntie that ends up being like, you don't fuck with that person, right? Because they get shit done. They put their foot down. That's exactly what Donald Trump has been doing for the amount of months he's been in office. He has been putting his foot down, and he has been making deals, and he has been making those promises. There is probably like one thing that I don't agree with him on. I know, shocker. And that thing is that people have to repay their student loans back. Now, I don't have a student loan. I had a free ride of FAFSA, and I already knew what I wanted to study in college. That's why I have a creative writing and a publishing certificate. So I don't have student loans, but I do understand that student loans can be crippling. Any kind of loans can be crippling. And I do understand that if you take it out, you should know the consequences of it. However, if you wanted people to basically start on a clean slate, this would be just a one-time freebie. This is the only thing that I would do for the American people across the board, is to eliminate all kinds of debt. And that will be the one freebie that everyone would get. If someone decides to take out another loan, that's on them. They have to pay that back. But because we were coming from the Biden administration that basically put a freeze and a pause on the student loans or the student loan forgiveness, and then with Trump, it gets restarted again, people who were trying to make better with their lives, depending on like the situation or whatnot, now have to rebudget everything and then take care of those student loans. I would have just eliminated the burden and be like, this is a one-time freebie, and then bam, you would have been in the good graces of the American people, and the left and the Democrats would never have spun that, because then they will come to the conclusion that basically that's to make him the good guy and to get reelected. Let's just say, even though it can't happen, but that would be the train of thinking, and you can't really spin that to be bad, because every single person in Congress wants to be reelected. So what they're going to do, they're going to try and manipulate you guys to be like, if you don't vote for me, you're not going to get this, this, and this, and this, stuff like that. But yeah, that's the only thing that I disagreed with Trump on, if you wanted to know. Anyway, so Mick Foley went on to say, I believe I'm going to be excoriated by people from the left and the right alike, but I have to take that chance. By the way, I am neither. However, people might assume that I'm on the right because I talk about common sense stuff that is seen as being radical, and even being honest can seem being radical, and they will automatically say that you are on the right. And it's like, no, I try to be as centralist as I can, trying to look at both sides, trying to still have that common sense logic whenever we talk about issues. And some of the issues that we still have in 2025 is not a big deal. It is not. It's just that people are bored. People don't have hobbies. People don't have skills. And if you don't have that, you're going to focus on everything sexual, everything agenda, everything woke, because you're trying to overcorrect something that doesn't need to be overcorrected. So that's why people might think that I'm on the right, because it's like no one gives a shit about that kind of stuff. It really doesn't. Oh, you said a slur? Well, I'm going to hold it against you for the next 5 years and never, ever let you forget about it, because that makes you a piece of shit. Do you know how easily people throw around, oh, you're a piece of shit. Oh, you're a piece of shit. When it's like you could just tell them no. You could just simply say no to whatever it is that they wanted and you'll be a piece of shit. Like, how does that make sense? So Mick Foley goes on to say, now I want to make it a point. This is not a joke. Obviously not. I hope it's not. I will say that I'll give Mick Foley credit for doing a video like this. But again, nuance. He needs nuance with this. Mick Foley goes on to say, I'm not out here to sling one-liners at you or call you names. That's a good thing. I don't ever think Mick Foley ever does that, so I already knew. He goes on to say, I'm here to appeal to you as a human being because only you can stop the madness that's going on in our country. This is where I'm going to pause and say, no shit. This is exactly why he's mobilizing the National Guard and ICE agents to make America safer again. This is what he's doing. Of course, he's trying to stop the madness, but you have governors in blue states that are like, no, you can't do any of this stuff. You can't do this. We're going to stop you at every single moment. But Mick Foley didn't say a word during Obama. Mick Foley did not say a word during the Biden administration. Mick Foley did not say anything when Laken Riley was killed. Mick Foley didn't say anything when the Argentinian gang decided to evict everybody out in their houses in Colorado in the ghettoest, poorest area that they found, and they decided to take it over and make it into a hideout. Mick Foley didn't say anything about New York City and about the Roosevelt Hotel, where all of the gang cartels were holding up in there and having women and children as hostages and letting them go do their work amongst the streets in New York City. No word from Mick Foley on any of those situations. No word on those situations from the mainstream media, aka CNN. We had no coverage of that. We did, but it was quickly try to be like swept under the rug, even to a point where I really don't want to put him on blast, but Raj Giri also was like, that's not happening here in Colorado, and he lives in Colorado, and it's like, bro, it was on the news that the gang basically decided to make this apartment complex their hideout. You would think that living in your own city, you would notice these things. But again, Mick Foley did not make a video addressing the Biden administration or addressing Obama's administration when any of this stuff was happening. And Obama was doing the same thing too, mobilizing ICE agents and getting illegals out of the country. And for years, the Democrats were campaigning on this, and they said that if you come here illegally, you are breaking the law. If you come here and break the law, we will deport you. It happened all the way back since Clinton. Since Hillary Clinton as well, too. She was saying the same thing. We have these videos. We have them on record. So why is it that one man gets to have so much hate towards him? The same way that, like, in general, talking about other things, that people just focus on hating somebody for the sake of hating somebody when you don't have anything substantial to hate them about. Let's continue. Mick Foley said, I believe you are due a lot of credit when it comes to the Gaza ceasefire and peace plan. You deserve the Nobel Peace Prize. It's yours. If you can stop the madness in this country, you will not be given the Nobel Peace Prize if you are seen as inciting tension or terror, or if you are seen zip-tying children and senior citizens, abducting day laborers just looking to do an honest day's work. I don't want to use the word terror, but if people are terrified across wide swaths, of the United States. In my opinion, that's terrorism. Mick Foley, you fool. You are so foolish. Let's break this thing down. The president does not incite any type of tension or fear. Whenever there is a press conference and the president does the press conferences and give answers, the media outlets that are there will constantly cut up his words, twist his words. You have CNN that does a roundtable panel and they're always talking about some shit that's not really going on. And then you have social media that gets used as a weapon. No one is zip tying children. That little video, which is only one, by the way, it's one. No other children has been filmed being zip tied, because then it would have been all over, because then the people that I watch would have made a note of it. It would have popped up on my timeline. It would have happened. The one time that a child is seen being zip-tied and handcuffed, really, is a father and son duo that likes to play cops and robbers. The father even went on social media to say that, how dare you guys take this and spin it out of context. And this is what I mean, that people like Mick Foley who live in a glass house, they do not do research. They do not do research beyond their fucking minds. It just frustrates me that he would have to repeat the really bad talking points that the Democrats and the mainstream media want you to think so you can feel scared. And senior citizens, listen, if that senior citizen is causing a ruckus or basically getting in the way of a federal act such as trying to impede on ICE, listen, man, they are obstructing justice. It's written in the code. But if a senior citizen is getting taken away, that should be on my timeline. Where is that? Who's talking about that? And who is abducting day laborers? By the way, nobody is kidnapping anybody. If you decide to throw rocks at ICE agents, if you decide to try to stop them, if you decide to try to get in their way and walk in front of them, and they decide to take you down and take you in, that is not kidnapping you. You decided to do an action. Now you're getting the consequences. This is very similar to when you have children and you have toddlers and they start fighting and you have to assess the situation and be like, you go in that corner, that person goes in that corner. Like, you know, when someone does something wrong, you basically correct them on it. The same way here that people are trying to interfere into their work. So no one is getting kidnapped. No one is being abducted. And if they are, they're going to be taken in, they're going to be processed, and they're going to be let out within a couple hours so they can have them on file to be like, this person is obstructing justice. So we got to keep them on record. It's what you do for anything if someone acts up. And an honest day's work. They get paid under the table wages, Mick. If we as a society are not okay with slavery, right? Because during slavery, they were really maybe not paid. Maybe they were paid, depending on what it is. But they worked long hours to go and pick cotton to make sure that family life was run in order. And they were doing this as slaves, right? And if we all collectively agree that that was bad back in the day, when you say here in your little speech that day laborers just looking to do an honest day's work is basically the same thing. Why are you not up in arms about labeling it that way and using that phrase? Because even in your Instagram post, you basically stereotyped people with old ass jobs back in the day that can be looked upon as like, yo, that's racist. Why are you trying to assign a color to the particular work that they're doing? And the particular work that they're doing is also considered an honest day's work. And that means that they're getting paid under the table. They're not getting paid through a W-2 form or a 1099K for being a freelancer, which will be a better honest day's work because even though taxes are taken out, it could still be tracked and it won't feel like, hey, you get to be a slave for the day. You know, that might be like out of left field to think of it that way, but it just goes to show you that sometimes the older that you get, you can still be out of touch, especially with the way that you phrase things. There's nothing wrong with saying, this person is trying to do an honest day's work. We understand that phrase, but we all know who he's talking about. We all know what kind of group he's talking about. We all know that it's either black or brown because that's what the media has basically told us what to think about. They don't really allow us the grace to think like, oh, it's a normal person. It's a human being. No, this basically is the opposite of that. And then he doesn't want to use the word terror, but no one is really afraid. It's all manufactured. It's manufactured to keep the infighting going. And here's another thing that I want to talk about. I was scrolling through probably Instagram and a video popped up of a black guy talking about his home state in Chicago. And he was explaining that under the Biden administration, when everybody came over through the wall, all of the illegals, they put all the illegals inside the really bad rundown ghetto neighborhoods in Chicago. And he was like, this is all by design. And he was explaining that, this was their plan all along, because if you really think about it, when ICE agents are going into really bad neighborhoods and the National Guard is going into really bad neighborhoods, what is the one constant story that we always talk about, that you always hear in rotation of the stories? It has to deal with two colors, black and brown. You might include other people if you want to, but I really don't like talking about color like this. I really don't, because I don't see color. I see action and how you treat people. And that shouldn't be dependent upon your color. But either way, let's just go with this because I really want you guys to listen. So it is all designed so that way the black and brown people and Hispanics and Spanish people can end up being collateral damage, whether that is physically, mentally, emotionally, and used as pawns whenever the media talks about them. But oh no, I must be a bad person for bringing this up. No, I just need you guys to look a little bit more deeper into these situations, into these conversations, because that dude that I saw the video from opened my eyes to a different perspective of, oh shit, he is 100% right. So what the Biden administration and the Democrats always want to do is that when they allow the illegals to come in and they put them in the poorest neighborhoods and the really bad communities, it's to destabilize those communities even further, so that way they could become unrest. So that way, if some of the natives of the state of Chicago, ends up dying, they could be replaced with the illegals eventually, because they'll get full citizenship. And then with the amount of illegals that came in, they can definitely remain in power in Congress, in the government, and they will continue to be making the worst decisions ever. So this is why it's very important and crucial to basically understand why ICE and the National Guard are going into these communities and basically deporting them. It does not matter. And no, they're not deporting American citizens. What they're doing is that, again, if you decide to throw a rock at an ICE agent or something and obstruct the justice, they will book you and they will release you. They're not deporting your ass. It makes no sense. You are an American citizen. They know you're an American citizen. You can show your ID. Oh shit, you're from this state? Okay, we're going to book you, release you. That's it. Go on home. And just think about it, ladies and gentlemen. If they were to deport an American, where the fuck are they going to send them? They can't send them to Mexico because maybe the person is not of Mexican descent. And even if they did send them to Mexico, where would they do it? And I don't even think the president of Mexico would even be like, yeah, let me take him or her. No. Where would America send an American citizen if they were to deport them? Like, you guys can't be this fucking stupid, right? So if Mick Foley is worried about terrorism and people terrified and stuff like that, it was meant by design from the very beginning, because What else are you going to do? You're not going to allow the illegals to stay on the land that much longer, right? You're going to have to put them back to where they came from, because now they're causing destruction and making everything off balance in the United States. So it's going to look like terrorism, but this is all manufactured. Even though Biden was asleep at the wheel, they knew. Let's continue. Mick Foley says, now, Mr. President, we're at a crossroads where it seems one of two things can happen in the future of our country. It appears to me as if you're trying to consolidate power, perhaps turn our country into something of an autocracy. I am going to pause there and say, please stop listening to Bernie Sanders. Please stop listening to AOC, because both of those two nutheads will constantly say like oligarchy and like all these other words. And here comes Mick Foley with autocracy, which means a system of government by one person with absolute power. How is that possible? The only way for Donald Trump to get absolute power, you do know that he has to somehow dismantle the Constitution. He has to dismantle Congress. He has to dismantle the House. He has to dismantle everything that we've known for so many years, since 1776. He has to dismantle all of it in order for him to become one person with absolute power. Where in the months that he has been president, where are the signs of this happening? How is this happening? How is he planning to rule the United States as one person with absolute power? His whole entire team are delegated to do this, to do that, to do this, and to do that. Basically, the president of the United States is a face for what happens and what gets done. It is his team, both Democrats and Republicans and independents alike. It is his team that basically gets everything done. So he's still using a team. He's not using himself. So if someone in the comments can explain that to me, of how you think, if you think along the lines of Mick Foley, how you think that he's trying to make a system of government by one person with absolute power. Does he want power? No, he doesn't want power. When has Donald Trump ever wanted power? That means that every other president before him would want that same power too. But again, like I said, it's only Trump that triggers people. That makes no sense when they're trying to figure this out or talk about it and stuff like that. But seriously, Mick, he's not doing that. There's no way. Like, nothing leads to that. So Mick Foley goes on to say, and if that happens, then you get to rewrite history and you get to be the hero. This is how you know Mick Foley and others don't really pay attention to anything. You know, Trump may come off as wanting to be a hero and having that confidence, and the way that he talks and the way that he phrases things may not always be 100% right. But during his campaign trail, when that lady from CNN asked him the question of wanting to win the war in the Ukraine and winning the war this and winning the war that, because she made it pretty obvious that like America has to win, that it's win, 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 right? And basically someone who wanted to be the hero in any kind of story would have been like, yes, it is our American duty to win this war on behalf of whatever, even though it's the war in Ukraine. But somebody who wanted to be the hero would have told her what she wanted to hear, what the American people wanted to hear, and what they were going to print for the press. But no, Donald Trump did not do that. Donald Trump does not really want to be the hero. Donald Trump just said that he wants people to stop dying. And that's exactly what he is delivering on. He is delivering on peace deals that will stop people from dying, even though that's not always a 100% like open and shut case. But for the meantime, ceasefires and stopping stuff, you still have time to recover. You'll make some more human beings. But again, he's really about like stopping human lives from being destroyed. What hero would want that? Like, a hero wants to be seen as someone who did very great things through the means of like using their status, right? But somebody here might say on the flip side, well, that sounds like him because he got the ceasefire, he got peace, he's the hero. But he did not do it by himself. He had his team behind him. If he did not have his team behind him, then yeah, I'll have a different opinion about it. But regardless of how you look at it, he's not looking to be the hero. He's just looking to be the guy that's the figurehead, the figure face of the United States, to be like, hey, we got to stop. You're killing innocent people. Stop doing that. That's all he cares about. He doesn't care about being the hero, Mick. So Mick Foley goes and says, but if that does not happen, in my opinion, as someone who's worked in 50 states, 37 countries, and been around the world a bunch of times, including 2 million miles in an automobile, history will not treat you kindly. Sir, you bumped and did death matches for a living. You did hardcore matches for a living, sir. You could barely walk. And you honestly don't know what happens in each of those states, those countries, and around the world, because you're not living there between 5 to 10 years to understand everyone's different little stories and different things that happen, dude. Like, man... Mick goes on to say, but you and you alone have the ability to diffuse the tension, to stop the madness, to halt the terror. You, Mr. President, and you alone have the ability to bring peace to America. The buck stops with you. No shit, Mick. That's what he's been doing. Maybe, make a video for all of the Democrat leaders in the blue states to tell them to stop their shit. Because honestly, it's really sad to know that people are in their glass houses and they don't want to go out into the ghettos and really look at how the Black community lives. Look at how the Hispanic community lives. Look at any poor neighborhood compared to anybody in the rich areas and stuff like that. Let's go back to the whole thing about illegals being put into the poor neighborhoods to disrupt everything. You notice that throughout the 4 years, none of them really went up to the rich areas, right? They didn't put them over there. Maybe you had like some stragglers and stuff like that did some horrible shit, but it was never really talked about. So it's like... he is trying to bring peace to America, but you're having people stopping him as if like he is the bad man for the job, when again, he wants to save human lives. He wants to make sure that we're all living good. He wants to be a businessman. Just because this president is not a puppet and not doing what the Democrats want, which is to get over on anybody because they don't give a shit about you. They never did. And, just because he's not playing to their tune doesn't mean that it is his fault. You also have to blame the other people, too, that don't want to play within this huge-ass sandbox that's like, hey, we got to do good by the American people. That's why the Constitution says we the people, not I the people. I am going to be very honest with you guys. For someone like me that is speaking up on this and basically speaking out about it and giving nuances and perspectives and stuff like that, I never really wanted to get that deep into politics, but after Charlie Kirk's assassination, that's why I'm going a little bit more harder now, and I understand that this is something that you guys don't really want to hear because it's not wrestling related, but at the same time, it's really frustrating to allow people like Mick Foley and like Hangman Adam Page and like Brie Bella, and also we'll throw Brody King in here too, and also the wrestling fans in the wrestling community for years to speak so loudly and be so wrong, and then also try to bully you into silence. Because for the most part, I want to be left alone. But the other side keeps pushing madness, and the other side keeps pushing really weird agendas. And that agenda goes on to kids and woke and all this kind of stuff, and trying to disrupt just normal shit because they want to be rebels and they want to be brainwashed and they want to think like they know everything when they don't. And they think that they know more than you, and they think they're doing a good job by raising all this anarchy and chaos. I said this before on Twitter that chaos does not bring progression. Chaos is a regression, and then they think that they're doing a very, very good thing. For the most part, myself and other people who think like me want to be left alone. We want to talk about wrestling. We really don't want to talk about politics and whatnot and all that. And you might say, well, why are you doing it? Because I do not like liars. I do not like the fact that Mick Foley here is in his Airbnb. We'll get to the last part, but that Mick Foley here is just spewing the shit that he sees on the news and don't do further research at all, or even talk to people outside the bubble to get 2 different perspectives, maybe 3 different perspectives, and then you can speak on something like this. If you're not watching the guys who are on the ground, such as Nick Sorter, there's Cam, there's David, there's a bunch of people that are on the ground that are asking questions, that are video recording, documenting, stuff like that. There's a lot more people. I just can't think of them off the top of my head. But these are people that I trust because they're there on a consistent basis and giving us the 411 on like, you know, what's happening on the ground. Especially now there's this guy that I follow, basically it pops up on my timeline that he's showing what's happening in Portland right now with all the crackheads. And I could do that too here in the Bronx and also on 125th because we have crackheads as well. But again, like nothing is being done to help them. And you have people that are making videos like, Mr. President, it's all your fault. Listen, man, if you want the Nobel Peace Prize, you gotta calm down the temperature here. And it's always the one side that's like, hey, calm down the temperature. When it's like, what? What reality are you living in? So the point is that if it wasn't for people lying, if it wasn't for people not doing research and trying to get a different perspective before they speak on things, I probably wouldn't be doing this. And then also if Charlie Kirk was still alive, I wouldn't be going this hard about it. But, you know, conversations need to continue. The mic still needs to be on and whatnot. And this is still part of wrestling because Mick Foley is a legend. But when it comes to politics, he doesn't know anything. This is the last paragraph. Mick Foley says, I want to make it clear that this is something I'm doing on my own. I'm in a rented Airbnb in Nashville. There are no notes in front of me, no teleprompter. This is just me looking at the camera, speaking from my heart to you, a fellow human being, a fellow 2013 WWE Hall of Famer. You and you alone, Mr. President, have the power to stop the madness. I'm going to pause right there because, bro, you are not the Uncle Sam poster of we want you with the finger pointing. It sounds very finger pointing. You and you alone, Mr. President, can stop a forest fire. Only you have the power to stop the madness. Pointing finger, pointing finger, pointing finger. Like, bro. Okay, Mick Foley goes on to say, thank you for watching, Mr. President. Thank you for listening. And thank you to whoever brought this video to your attention because I know you're a very busy man. Yeah, he's a busy man. He's making peace deals. He doesn't have time to deal with this nonsense. Mick Foley goes on to say, I don't believe it's going to make a difference, but I would love it if you would prove me wrong. Again, why is it Trump's fault? How can it be his fault? What has he said specifically that can incite terror when most of the time it's him being frustrated with the reporters that are there because they want to try to get a gotcha statement. They want to try to ruffle his feathers. But yet then the other side would be like, he's using his power to try to put his political adversaries in jail. Oh, during the campaign, you guys tried to put him in jail, try to get him for 34 counts of felonies when later on it turned out that they were just misdemeanors because money was misplaced when he had his other financial person dealing with his money. That's all it was. And I remember being in a group chat that celebrated the fact that he got 34 felony counts, but he was still able to run and became our president. And then the excuse was that, oh, he only did it so that way he could avoid going to jail. Something like that. And, I kept my mouth shut on certain things that liberals decided to really mouth off on. And it's really sad looking back at it. It's really sad that I decided to stay silent because, again, when you peddle lies and when you peddle misinformation and misleading stuff, it becomes like this. It becomes like just an open letter that doesn't really give any nuances to it, that doesn't understand stuff. And yeah, as much as this takes balls to do, and there's one thing that you can't take away from Mick Foley, whether you want pun intended or no pun intended, but you can't take away Mick Foley's balls because this takes balls to be like, Mr. President, I have a critique for you and I want you to listen because people are scared. But then again, the flip side is if you're not doing research, if you're not on like Ground News, and by the way, this is not an ad because I'm not signed up to Ground News, but Ground News does a pretty amazing job at trying to get you to understand what the news is happening around the world, how they're talking about it, who's talking about it more, is the left talking about it more, is the right talking about it more, is the center talking about it more, and what Ground News does is that it allows you to understand how headlines are made and how propaganda is made. So if you're constantly listening to CNN and getting your news sources somewhere else, drop mainstream media and go somewhere else. It's the same thing in the wrestling community. Drop all the dirt sheets and just enjoy wrestling, even though I hate that phrase. I hate the enjoy wrestling crowd only because it is so fake and toxic. But to prove this point, drop all the dirt sheets. They are not on the front lines. They don't really work with any of the companies. They're just like, hey, you a grunt? Hey, you want my phone number? Hey, what dirt can you give me on such and such wrestler? Who is disgruntled in such and such company? Then every once in a while, they'll travel to a convention or they'll travel to a promotion so that way they can take the pictures and do the interviews and be like, look, guys, I'm on location. So that must mean that I'm doing my job right. And it's like, no, you're not on the front lines. You're not traveling with the company. You're not there every single time. You're not trying to uplift them, So it's the same thing in the wrestling community that drop all the dirt sheets and just enjoy the program and don't worry about any backstage drama. Even though drama and negativity help people get paid, which is very unfortunate. But yeah, we don't do that here. We just tell it like it is. I am trying to make honesty great again, and I hope you guys appreciate that. And I hope you guys see and understand the nuances in this. And now I'm going to put it as both Squared Cirlce Podcast and Discord Notes in a way. So this is a joint collaboration of the two shows. But I know this is not my normal thing, but I wanted to talk about Mick Foley's message because he's still within the wrestling community. He's still, a wrestler and all of that and doing what he needs to do. But if he's not going to step outside his bubble and talk to people and see how it really is rather than listening to people, then I don't know. Because that Instagram post was so fucking tone deaf. The one picture that he found is a brown family, a Hispanic family, and the kid is holding up a sign saying that no parent is criminal or my parents are not criminals. And it's like, if you are here legally, you went through the system, you basically went through all the paperwork and you took the test and you passed the test and you were able to be in that ceremony that people take a video of and they're like, hey, I finally became a United States citizen. If your parents did that, then you are fine. We're not talking about you guys. We're talking about undocumented workers that have been here for years and their employer does not want to make them a legal citizen because the employer knows that once that person becomes a legal citizen, they have to pay them the correct amount of money for the work that they are doing. But employers want to be fucking cheapskates and don't do any of that stuff. But yet then you guys will believe the most stupidest of propaganda, but won't go to the root causes of why we have to do the things that we do. If more undocumented workers end up getting their papers, if we convince employers to help them with that process, then we would not have to deport them, unfortunately, to an extent. As for criminals and gang people, yeah, get them out because they will not think twice about your life. This is what I never understood about people advocating for the criminals, but they want to say that they're legal or they just want to say immigrants because, again, that's how the system works. That's how wording works. You know how the other side is always like, yo, words are violent and stuff like that? Well, listen to the word choice that they choose. And if they keep saying, oh, you're just against immigrants, no. We are against people that want to come here, kill, and try to make their own type of living here because they don't know anything else. And then we're also against undocumented workers that are here that are taking space and jobs available that we could start teaching the American people how to grow food again, how to be sustainable, all that kind of stuff. That used to be very proud to do. You're able to build a house out of lumber. Fantastic. We need that. Oh, you're able to grow some apples? We need that. Fantastic. You're able to grow some vegetables? We need that. You know how to take care of cows? We need that. We need a lot more people to be very diverse. And it's to take care of our people first because the more that we live in cities, the more that we live in suburbia and stuff like that, the more that we become lazy, the more that we become bored, the more that we become uninterested in learning new things about new people and new life and new culture because everything will be convenient. It is human nature to challenge ourselves, to challenge the ground that we walk on, whether that is city concrete or out in the country fields. Everything in our body is like, yo, we should be challenged. Yo, that seems like a very good challenge. We should endure what Mother Earth is giving us rather than just being convenient and just letting people who are undocumented do all the work and AKA slavery, basically. While we are so convenient, so spoiled that you think by putting these people back to where they came from is a slight against your comfortability. And I really hope that I'm making sense towards the end because I don't know how else to phrase it. This is the first time that I'm thinking out loud about this and nobody wants to have these conversations. And sometimes in the wrestling community, they will say the same shit that Mick Foley is saying. And it's like, no, stop it. You have to look at these issues way deeper than the day laborer that only wants a hard day's worth of work. And we all know that means to be paid under the table. We know what that means. But the newer generation don't know what that means because no one is teaching them. Everyone is like, oh, you can do whatever you want. You can say whatever you want. There's no repercussions. Oh, wait a minute. You're a white person? Oh, grab your pitchforks. That's exactly how it feels out here. It really does. So now I want to hear from you guys. What do you guys think? Put your comments down below. Please keep the emotion out of your comments. Please do so. This is meant to just give more information, more nuances, and open up the discussion even further. Because if you just stay within the bubble, you're going to feel like everything is terror or terrorism. You're going to feel stuck. You're going to feel like the world is against you. The world isn't against you. The world just wants to get back to normal. The world just wants people to be as they are, but not pushed upon them agendas or anything like that. And communities want to get better and feel safer. If you want the other side to feel safe, but you don't want the other side you're against to feel safe, you're not really being tolerable. Because if you want safety for all, you have to keep that same energy for all. And that includes the illegal immigrants. That includes the undocumented immigrants as well. And also any kind of destruction and crime that happens within really heavy crime-ridden cities. And we already know what those cities are. But again, because we have a new generation of kids that are brainwashed and will listen to anybody and anybody, or everyone and anyone, they're not going to seek out the knowledge of the older folks or anybody else that would be like, yeah, this happens for years. But we have come so far into coddling our people and just trying to make safe spaces for everybody and not try to fix the root problems of things. This is why we have such a lack of communication, a lack of morality, a lack of humanity as well, even though they say that they are like, you know, they want humans to be good and they like human beings and you are a human being and should be treated as a human being. They don't know what they want. So with all that being said, because I know I'm probably going to go around the circle and I really don't. This is already an hour in because I also talked about Dustin Rhodes and I'm ending this on Mick Foley stuff. But yeah, let me know down in the comments below what you think. Leave a comment. This will be available on all platforms. It will be free to listen to. And yes, this is going on the Squared Cirlce Podcast. With that being said, ladies and gentlemen, I am your host, Marie Shadows, and I'll see you guys on the next one.